right. Welcome to the car ride home, our very first episode. I'm the host, Jami Lobpries, and I am honored to have our first car ride conversation with Tony Rico. He's now the president of the Firecrackers. In my mind, a legend in regards to player development. And we'll get into a lot of that. But originally from Southern California, son of a World War II veteran. I know that's important for you, Tony. Played college baseball, and we'll talk a lot about his story, where it started, where he is today, both with the Firecrackers, the Alliance Fastpitch, a lot of things that Tony has been involved in. But I think I'm more than happy now to just be able to call you a friend and have a conversation. I get the privilege of hearing from Tony quite a bit, and I'm excited for everybody else to dive a little bit more into Tony. But before we start, we're calling this the car ride home. Maybe we're going to practice. Maybe we're going to lessons. So we're in the car. We've all been on that car ride. So Tony, your choice. First off, what are we listening to? What music are we listening
Well,
to?
first thing is it a two-seat car? I mean, there's two of us in there, but if we had more room for people, I'm always kind of wondering who else. If we could put somebody else in the car, who would you put in the car right now to make the car ride entertaining or important? I'm going to put you on the spot right away, Jamie. Can you think of anyone?
The first person that came to mind is Marty. You got to put Marty in the car with you because I know that dialogue. So let's go, Marty.
That's a great part about spontaneity, and we'll talk a little bit more about Marty and the perception of Marty Tyson, and as opposed to like what we've learned about it. Right? I would put Don Menard. So it'd be Don Menard and Marty in the back seat. No, Don would have to be in the front seat, so I couldn't sit in front with him. But those two right there in our car, for anyone that knows Don Menard or Marty Tyson, we haven't even left the driveway,
So what are we
and I'm
turning?
already
What
loud.
music's on? What's our music?
Well, I'm going to ask you because it might be an obvious kind of perception. So,
Though I would love to listen to music, I don't think you're going to get any music with those two in the car with the storytelling that's going to be going on.
yes, okay. Well, boy, again, I don't want to stereotype what I think Marty might like, but like every time you play the Angels, they're playing a certain type of music. And Don Menard's like Frank Sinatra, man. Like, oh, you put on Frank Sinatra with Don. The thing about Don is that in one stretch of the ride, he would be talking about life and teaching us things, and in his what I call poetic voice. And then the next thing you know, and people have heard this before, he turns into Dean Martin, or he just gets this. So when you play kind of Frank Sinatra type music, he just loves that. And then kind of the question is too, and again, is the music for you, or would you play music for the people in the car? Because you never know, right? You get in someone's car and they're playing what they love. You're like, oh, get me out of here, let me out. Or are you playing it for the car? So those are things to think about. So now you're playing it for the car. What do you choose?
Well, in my car ride, typically growing up, I was with my mom. And it's funny now because it was oldies. So now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, the music I listened to back then in the 90s, I guess that's the oldies now. So that'd be, but we were Beatles. My mom's a Beatles and Eagles. That's what I listened to.
I feel like the timeless music, the first one is Motown. So even like for our kids, we play it in our warehouses a lot, and a lot. At first, the kids are like, "Can we put our music on?" And we try to explain to them, "Look, these playlists are tied to memory. So if we play your music all the time, there's nothing that's really going to separate. Oh, when you hear this, you're going to think of something, right? So, and at first, they don't really get the Motown stuff. Some of them have heard it from their parents or grandparents, but and within a few months, they like it. And so I think Motown's really good, oldies, and I just think because of stadium appeal and everything else, and because of the words of the songs, country music. And it's not so much because it's my preference, even though as a hobby drummer, I do appreciate the style of drumming that I hear nowadays in country music. Um, but that's something else that I think people just in general. So, and then again, for people going, man, they're going on and on about music. Last thing is just how many people that might be listening. So if there's two people that we can get their attention, how many listen to talk radio in the car, either with their dads, or if your dad's in the car, you put on either a ball game or something, and you're listening to just talk radio. And so the car ride home, it's just a conversation. It's an alternate or a alternative or a substitute or a supplement to what you might be listening in the car.
Well, and
Hopefully we can entertain.
we're gonna get into some of that of why this is an important conversation and how we can help fill some of that airspace because so many of us do spend as an athlete, as a parent, we spend time in that car. But last question before we jump into it, because food is always important for a softball player. So where are we stopping to eat after practice on that car ride home?
So unfortunately, I have the story of a lot of coaches that I've probably had more meals in the car and probably just horrible for my intestines and things. So I'm good with anything except I just don't prefer like just straight Chinese food. I don't even know if there is something like that, but I'm pretty much good with grab and go anything. That's I remember one time Lovey Jung had seen me eating in a restaurant and I was using a fork and she was staring at me and I said, "What are you staring at?" And she says, "I've never seen you use a fork before." And she'd been on our team a couple of years. I looked at her, I go, what kind of comment was that? She goes, "Tony, you always have a burrito, a hamburger, or pizza. Like you're up, you always." And observations by your kids, right? I was like, what the heck? And I started to think, but how often do I use a fork? So I'm pretty easy to please. But if we had to go down to, I think this is the easy one. Okay, what's your pick? Where are we stopping to eat? I'm gonna say Whataburger because you're Texas based. But is that
There
too
was
obvious?
Whataburgers. You know where I stopped every day? This is after soccer practice for about 6 years of my life. Taco Bell. It terrible. At least it was after practice, I guess. But
Bring
man,
back the Bell Beefer. So now I'm going to go to the parents and grandparents. Bring back the Bell Beefer because I just think that was, and something that we don't have in California, and I get credit about this from our staff all the time and our team, is Fazoli's. You ever eaten at Fazoli's?
I have.
Fazoli's is fast food, Olive Garden fast food. So it's like you can get chicken parmesan, you get lasagna, spaghetti, but all to go. There's a drive-through. So I like every time we go to Colorado, I'm like, let's go to Fazoli's. And the team's like, no, but I love Fazoli's, but I also don't get to have it that often. So all right, we got our music and our meals covered, and hopefully you've got gas in the car, so we can get
We
that.
got gas. That's important. So let's ride here. I want to start with your background, Tony. Obviously, a lot of people know you now from the Firecrackers, but it didn't always start that way. I hear a lot. In fact, probably most of the players that hopefully we interview, former legends on this, that have somehow worked with you. But where did Tony Rico's intro to softball story begin?
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm going to try to roll through this fast. First of all, like I personally, for me, I can't stand looking at myself, talking about myself, but I do understand the importance of telling the story. So I am very comfortable and have quite often like told the story of things. And I think that's important because the position that we're in right now, and there could be a lot more trust in softball, right? So to people's motives and intention and things like that. So I think when someone can hear part of the story, I always tell our groups when we speak to them, now you can evaluate me. Now you can assess me. Is it true, like what you might have heard about me, and then what you've heard out of my mouth? Those things match up. Make sure you tell everybody I'm this or I'm that. So, story just began with humble background, humble family, loving family, great family structure. We didn't know what we didn't have. We really didn't have anything materialistically, but man, we had great cohesiveness and general rules growing up. Never so, and I thought everybody had this, but I was pretty fortunate. I realized later, just not a lot of arguing, bickering, normal things between me and my brothers and sisters. I was the youngest of five, um, raised by a World War II veteran. So I kind of grew up with the perception that since my dad and my brother went to fight for this country at 18, that I was going to too. So as I started getting to be 15, 16, and playing sports my whole life, realized that wasn't going to happen. No direction, no anything. There weren't a lot of nobody went, and my family went to college. I didn't really grow up in an area where people are going to you know, getting college educations. Not a lot of business owners. So you're basically going to follow your fat dad's footsteps. I was just fortunate enough. I think athletically, our family was gifted. I was fortunate enough to play ball through college, and actually up through the age of 25, I got to play a year in Holland. So that would be another story sometime. But being the only, I think, Hispanic in the Netherlands in 1990, I think I was maybe one other, someone visiting. And so at 25, wanted to step into a real life. But before that, I had done a little side teaching and were given some batting lessons. And I had two softball students. When I returned from Holland, the Netherlands, one of those students was tracking down every Rico in the phone book. Her dad was, got a hold of my mom, asked me to come out and work with him. And I told him no, I didn't want to. People that know me know I'm often start things with no. I don't really buy in too quick. And there led one thing to another. I met this gentleman named Gary Wardine, who is the actual founder of the Firecrackers. At that time, they were playing on their cruisers. I believe Jenny Finch was on that team at that time. Um, and I turned him down. He asked me to come out and coach with him. I told him no, 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 probably for 3 weeks straight. I think I got angry at him by the third week he asked me. And now I'm working construction, so I did have that real job after I came back, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I wanted to follow my dad's footsteps. And I would just tell you now, 31 years later, here I am. I told Gary, no, I don't want to do this. I also told him I would only teach the players how to play. I would never manage the team. I never want to take the team. I don't want to deal with all those things. I'm a ball player. I'm a very simple person. I don't have much use off the field, I felt like. And then so here we are. Gary stepped out in 2002. And so I took the program over in 2003. Don Menard had joined us in 2002. So Gary, I believe, had already started to buffer my things that was inadequate in the areas. And Don had came and joined us. And he and I have been together 23 years now. And it's been a great ride, Jamie. It really, really has. So in the 90s, I would have said, man, in 2023, I'm still coaching softball. Just shoot me in the head because that's nothing I really aspire to be. And now, if you ask me, I would do this 10 times over. If you give me options to do a lot of other things, this has been a very rewarding part of my life.
Tony, there's many, because we could talk all day about some of your former players or athletes you've worked with, but something I've always respected out of you is the way you play with honor is a big thing for you in honoring those before you. And you talk a lot about coaches who haven't gotten a lot of credit and coaches who've impacted your coaching career, the legacies they've left. Can you talk a little bit about, from a coach perspective, who first influenced you, and some of those coaches that come to mind when you think about honoring those legends?
Yeah, well, first is the play with honor tag is coming from, again, when you're younger, it's not uncommon to not understand where you come from, not really be thankful for the things that you have in your life. You're not going to be doing your things, but it didn't take me, probably the year I spent in the other side of the world playing ball, realize where I came from and realize the values that our parents had given us. And then realizing my dad's opportunities that he had missed with sports and such to go fight for our freedom, be a soldier. And so, play with honor is about being thankful. Like that was just again something that I never consciously told my parents, but it was like I wanted to make sure that there was something that they taught me that we kept going, and the legacy of just being thankful, right? To kind of offset the stress and things that we go through. We all for whatever, even if it's meals, it's waking up another day. We have something to be thankful for. So it's just about keeping that in mind. It's not about the standard that you have to be at. So, we get lots of emails sometimes on this coach isn't playing with honor, this or that. And I just remind people that it's a reminder and thank you for holding people accountable, but it's about being thankful. So it starts with my parents. I think with a lot of people, I wish I could go back and thank and mention every coach, especially the ones that told me things that I should have listened to, that I just pretty much blew off and said, what do you mean practice more? Look how pretty my girlfriend is, just didn't listen to things. But I think the one name that comes to mind is Coach George Horton. So I played baseball at a junior college program at Cerritos College in Southern California. Nationally renowned, just a great program. We didn't know. We just thought it was the JC down the street. They'd asked us to play ball. Didn't know what I was going to do after high school. Tim Walton also is an alumni of Cerritos College. Kenny Gajewski, Oklahoma State, is also an alumni of Cerritos College. So there's a few, we call them birds. That's our nickname. Few birds in softball now, doing okay. But Coach Horton was played for the gentleman that started that program, Wally Kincaid, who I was also fortunate enough to play for a year. He was like a consultant. And Coach Kincaid built a program at Cerritos that was it was based on principles and a system of playing ball, very sound. So two things. You were told that you were going to be taught how to be a man. And at 18, you're thinking, I already am, so I'm not interested in that. And then you really didn't understand the systematic way of baseball that they were playing. But that really is responsible for the success, I believe, the success we've had with the Firecrackers. So Coach Horton is responsible for me drawing a hard line in the sand of deciding to change my behavior. So back in the day, like a lot of people, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, right? It's the size of the fight of the dog, right? So I was willing to fight anybody for anything, stick up for people. And Coach Horton used to say, Rico, we don't do that here. Rico, we don't do that here. That's all I heard my freshman year was, Rico, we don't do that here. Just came to a point to where I felt like I wasn't earning his respect. And I went and I wrote, keep the poise in my glove in my locker room. Probably gotten one or two more scuffles after that. But what I'm most proud of, and this isn't something that I would put on other people, but because of my own personal recognition of my temper was my problem. Finally, when I realized that, because I think this applies to a lot of people that, hey, don't make me mad and stuff like that, right? Is I haven't been kicked out of a game in my entire softball coaching career. And that is purely for the fact that the respect that I have for Coach, I just couldn't imagine a call where he said, got kicked out, went right back to who you were. And he would never do that. That's not Coach, but that's the standard I felt like he set for me. So Coach George Horton went on and coached at Cal State Fullerton. They won a national championship over at Fullerton. He helped build that program, build up the stadium, and he just retired from the University of Oregon, and he was just inducted to the Hall of Fame. So the highest honor for a college coach, he just recently gave. He was inducted a few years ago, but because of COVID, he got to speak at the ceremony this couple weeks ago. So we're all really, really proud of him. So there's a lot of people that owe a lot to Cerritos, the program, Coach Horton, some teammates that I had that went on and did some very good things too. So I think it just has to stop there. But wouldn't be here without him, definitely.
You mentioned behavior. I've heard you talk about behavior before, and dugout Tony. Can can you elaborate a little bit more? Because for parents that are listening, for coaches that are listening, and how important behavior is because of all the eyeballs watching you. What and who's dugout
Yeah, it's
Tony?
something we tell our players all the time. Well, behavior is something that people don't look for, right? But everyone notices. Okay, so now go back to pre-professional minded Tony. Um, if you're fortunate enough as a ball player or whoever to be able to have influence on people, so whether it's we're going to score this touchdown, we're going to win this game, whatever, but it's leadership. Some people are born with it, some people they learn it. But knowing that you can take the group in a direction, and when you're younger, you do it any way you can. You threaten people. You tell them if you make another mistake, I'm going to beat you up. Like you don't know, but what you're doing is you're taking a group of people to hear. And I, for whatever reason, I had that ability. So now you become civilized, and now the whole almost like the old baseball manager persona, where you just sit there like this, which I think pretty much is what people will see if they Google and search for a YouTube game with me or something like that. I'm not talking during a game. But dugout Tony has to also be able to either disrupt, meaning I need to change your state of mind because we're teaching these young ladies, right? They're not here to be perfect here. They're developing in our hands. And so you want to give them every opportunity to observe and make decisions and be in the persona. But there's so much ambiguity in softball. So number one being when you're in a softball uniform, you're in a softball game, a lot of people drop the professional behavior that they have at the office and they become outcome oriented and kind of obsessive and very reactive, right? And so it wouldn't work in the workplace. So now we've assimilated that in the ball field, and it's not where we need to be. So dugout Tony knows how to get real. I think that anybody that we've played against or coaches that I've coached against, the respect's always there, but that's ultimately, I think, how you earn respect. And for coaches that are trying to work their way up the food chain, yes, winning big or beating this team or beating that big name or that big brand is one thing, but it's more important to me how you engage them in the competition. So this is, I would say to everybody, if that person across the field just knows that you're saying, hey, let's go. Like, let's just do this. Whatever happens, happens. I'm okay losing. I'm going to try to win, but let's go. I'm not afraid of the moment in front of me. There's something that happens in the eye or acknowledging a behavior that you earn respect that way. So now it's a balance. Our team would tell you right now they've had some very real moments. I tell them I kind of do this. I go, that old Tony's in here and he's trying to get out. He wants to threaten you and scare you. I said, you decide which Tony you want to deal with today. And basically that is that. It's not winning the games. It's not you have to get a hit. It's, what do you see? What are your decisions, right? How are you going to play the game? And my ultimate dream is, believe it or not, to not talk and really not do much coaching except put a couple signs on, and because they're already capable and they're autonomous. So it's a little bit on some of the behavior stuff, but it's really what we prioritize with the Firecrackers mindset and behavior.
It's so interesting you say that because I just thought about watching my nieces play at 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and there's like five coaches out on the field and they're going crazy and they're yelling at the girls. And I'm just thinking they could learn a lot from just watching your behavior, some of the top youth coaches. What would you say to those coaches about what should their behavior be?
Well, first thing I would say is I understand. I get it. Like I get why you're acting the way you're acting. So I just don't believe that you're going to create change in telling people what they're doing wrong or just telling them what they need to do differently. So I don't know. For me, I love the puzzle. I think people are puzzles. Situations are puzzles. I love to just read people, see how they respond. So if it's somebody that's kind of like, maybe a little arrogant and not real open minded, then you're going to try to set an example next to them. but never tell them anything, so that at least they have, because maybe they never had an example of that. And then I think the other approach is to try to inspire someone. So if you can inspire, so acknowledge the good things that they have, and again, I think we're in a day and age where it's not sugarcoating, but it's like, you purposely not want to don't want to be harsh on people right away. So if 8 out of 10 people in my experience had a lot of personal security and happiness, then I'd say, hey, let's be harder on more people. But just my opinion, I think there's just so many people that could be happier and could have a stronger sense of security. So I think using that influence ability, let's do that. Let's let them get them to realize the truth in their own value. So that's coaches, that's parents, that's players, doesn't matter. And who doesn't like a pat on the back, right? Coach Don Menard is always good if we're walking through the lines after games, win or lose, and just telling the other coach, your third baseman did well. And then right away it's like, oh, you're just going to take her. No, no, no. He's just complimenting you in front of her because he wants to acknowledge what you're doing. But we get it. We get that lack of trust is, I think we're going to make a phone call to her. But no, it's a little bit.
We could go down that because I know you have some opinions on taking players. But I
Nobody
think it's
takes your players. Players lose or leave.
You mean nobody's stealing players?
No, yeah, nobody takes your players. Nobody steals your players. I get it. We tell our coaches it feels like your girlfriend just broke up with you. It hurts, right? So right or wrong, everybody makes a decision. The big thing that we're trying to do, Jamie, and this is like with our collaborations and everything else, is we're just passing on experience, right? Like if somebody's done this, if somebody's made those mistakes, somebody's been down that road, and they're not shoving information down your throat. So that's kind of the challenge with what we're doing too. We're not shoving it down people's throats, but or learn on your own, right? You can have that parent. All right, I tried to tell you, but learn on your own. Oh, look at that, you broke your arm. Told you not to jump off the roof. So it's just passing on those experiences so that people can take a look at it. And if we can fast forward their learning curve, right? So it doesn't take them 10 years to learn what we learned in 10. They can learn it in 1 or 2. Oh, we definitely helped. That's what we're trying to do.
I feel like when you reference, we might be probably talking about the Alliance and what we've created and why. Tony, you're one of the founders, right? What is, a lot of people ask, what is the Alliance? I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, what is your role? What do you see as your role within the Alliance and why you have embraced that role?
I always laugh at that because, again, it's kind of, for me, it's under the radar. If someone asked me, I said, my role is really about house rules and rules of engagement. So I feel comfortable overseeing or being part of conversations that either have conflict in them or, um, clarification, communication, relationship building. So it's basically watching how people interact with each other. And again, knowing that everyone's different. So maybe pointing out, hey, before you just say this, maybe acknowledge a point that someone else said, because learning about conflict resolution, whatever it is. So house rules, analogies all over the place. It's like we're going into somebody's house. If you're inviting multiple people into your house, there's some house rules. Do I need to take my shoes off in your house? Am I allowed to just badmouth that person over there in the backyard because I don't like him in your house? Maybe I don't like somebody, but maybe I shouldn't say anything in a certain setting. So, because we're not here to tell one you have to like and all get along, but you do have to respect. So, I think if you have rules based on respect, you can be an example of respect, and also be an example of vulnerability. We still make mistakes, so own it. So now you're not pointing the finger at people. You say, hey, look what I just did. Right. So, different things like that. I think it helps bring people together when you can empathize and relate to each other. So I think that's a big part of what we're doing too.
But it's interesting, right? Because you didn't have to work together, right? You didn't have to come and join forces with others, but you chose to. Why would you do that? Why would you choose to
Mom,
work with
my
others?
mom raised us. My mom was such a loving woman and just loved people, and our house was a gathering place. So it's an interesting combination of like perception, right? We've been using a term like the obvious perception of, it's a money grab, or Rico's about the money, or this or that. And then there's these other perceptions before the business model happened and the expansion. And that's he's like Gandhi, or he's like Yoda, or he's like this. But it's really a combination. If you can love people on one side of you, but then take care of business, because historically, the influencers in this game are usually people that have won, right? Because you mentioned something earlier. The people that are most capable and best designed to take softball to another place aren't the influencers. They're the good people of softball that might not have the notoriety because of this or that, or their daughter's not this, or their team's not this, or they're not that. But honestly, they're the people that understand values, business models, infrastructure, all these things. And so, again, I think that's part of why we talk about so many different things with the Alliance, because that's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to make things well, there's a lot of things in Alliance, and I think about when people ask about it, there's some obvious ones, but I'm really excited about recreating the college structure. Like just for, but then there's perception of it's just elite, and it's not just elite. We're working hard for everything, right? But the college structure of regional, super regionals, and we have a qualifier tomorrow. And I had that good discomfort of not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. And so now I can choose to either put all the pressure on us having to qualify, or what happens if we don't, and you don't uphold our standard. And that's totally the wrong way to go about this. Or I can accept the fact that we might not even qualify. And really, I just heard Coach Mike say this in a video. It's really about just watching them battle. And so now that's exactly what we're doing. It is the battle. Going to sound like it's going to sound like BS. I would rather try to qualify 4 times and not make nationals than and this is just for me, right? So because I don't want anyone to compare this or any other thing out there. But then to not have that and then not do well at nationals, then what experience did we really gain? And I know that's hard for people to palate because those outcomes, getting to nationals, perception of things. But it really is the battle. To listen to Marty, we're both like prepared that if we don't qualify tomorrow, even if we have decent odds, we have Vegas the next week. So that uncertainty and being back on the road, and it's a comfortable discomfort, it sucks and it's awesome because it's not comfortable, but it's exactly where we want to be because it's exactly what these players need. You're a College World Series player. You understand all of that. You understand them playing on the field in front of the crowd with the TV, ESPN, Jamie. And there's nothing better than knowing that you were prepared for it, right? That you were prepared for it. And you're saying, hey, I've done the work. Now I understand the best way to go about this to give myself a chance to do it well as I can.
That's all I knew going into college, right? I played in the days of ASA, and you had to qualify, and we didn't make it one week, you went the next, and we played. Obviously, we played full games. I was appalled when I came back in the game 10 years later, and that didn't exist anymore. But so you're telling me, as of January 20th, 2023, Firecrackers Rico 18U is not qualified for the AFCS, and you have to go qualified tomorrow.
We're already 0 for 1, so we already didn't qualify one time. So this is our second chance, and then we'll prepare for a third chance. And then, again, I think part of what I think people would want or need to know about the point structure in the Alliance, that I'm watching our points. If we don't qualify, don't win any qualifiers, we can get in on our points. So meaning we put enough effort in, we've been on the road, we've got the experience, and then hope to be considered. Part of that, I can hear someone go, God, listen to him. But it's the truth. You don't, no matter where you're at in the food chain, you don't prepare for just the best. Yes, you like your odds, you like your ability if you do, but if you understand the game, this game is the last game you ever want to play and say, we got this. We have all the confidence in the world. We're excited to engage, and I know if we play to our capabilities, we can, but the game is the game. So you always prepare for everything, but it doesn't mean you expect the worst. You just prepare for it. Yeah, as of today.
Speaking of that, I haven't asked you this, but going back to the AFCS last year, and you guys actually you got upset in super regionals, had to fight your way back out of that, then find yourself a team had to double, not to bring this back up, sorry, a team had to double dip you just to get into the championship. Did that, you've been coaching for a while, that did it change some of your coaching strategy? Did it kind of bring some new thoughts? Like, what did that do for you as a coach of now having to go through that college softball format?
I think the dynamics of our team, because I really believe in, like, I don't try to prevent, let's say, disasters on the field. We almost create them, right? So the failing or the losing or whatever, the going up and down is part of the development of our kids. We've had teams and kids that win most, if not all of the time, and then they're not prepared for like what happens when it doesn't go their way. So anyone that knows our team knows that we can win as much as we can lose on any particular weekend. The history of the Firecrackers is not all wins all the time. So it is a very real part of it, what we do. The Louisiana Bombers played well, and they knocked us down and we had to come back, but Albert did a great job over there, and I think he deserves a lot of recognition because, again, it's not even so much against us, but what his team did. And so, okay, it worked out there, and then we come back, and then, I just get to join the group of people that did this double dips, because he's double dipped about everyone. And, but again, those, knowing that those games were this close, going one way or the other, and being in those moments, and, you're doing yourself a favor if you can adapt a professional mentality to what you're doing, so you can have some balance to the ups and downs. Not too high when you're up, not too low when you're down. The sting is still there, the elation is still there, but it's not extreme. I think the word extreme applies to a lot of things I see in society right now, and with the word extreme comes extreme behavior and reactions and emotions. I don't know, cortisol is stress in your body and everything else. So maintaining a healthy balance through that all of that, I think, is important. So yeah, we go up, we go down. I was really proud of the team last year. I'll be honest with you, Jami. It's when you're part of something, you still have to be honest with it, right? Because and I would say this to you and for anyone that's listening, we're very critical on ourselves. So we don't on our meetings, we don't sit there and tell ourselves everything we're doing well and how great we are. Like, we're really trying to. This is a term I got from Dave King from Triple Crown. Put your idea up on the wall and shoot as many holes as you can in it, because eventually it's going to happen anyways, right? So I enjoyed that part of our dialogue. But I do got to tell you that at the beginning, I remember telling you, going to Indiana and taking some of the teams out here in the West to Indiana, I think I told you it better be good, because they won't go back twice. And, I've heard Marty say it. I'll say it. We can't wait to get back to Indiana next year. I know we're on the West this year, but man, you guys put together something that was just amazing. And so here we are, 20 something years into this, and we experienced something new, and it was a great experience. And so really, really happy with just where we're at right now with it, but still a long way to go, right? Still a long road ahead of us.
It's cool that you said, and you held me to that. And then I think you made a comment afterwards. I knew that, so that we had to put on a good experience, but we
That's
talk a lot.
important to follow up.
It's very important. And we know, I mean, as an athlete, and I was an athlete, right, that played, and we lost first game in super regionals, had to come back and win. We got beat, you have to learn. And we talk about that for the athletes. What we haven't talked about is the coaches. The coaches have to manage their team and manage a pitching staff through 7 innings, a week-long event. Learning how to beat a team twice, even as a coach, isn't something that you always do in that type of setting. So I think it's interesting to hear from your perspective of just like the thought process and different things that went into that too.
If your players are going on to the possibility of playing postseason college ball, and our job is to develop them, right? And it's kind of like with pitching, we add layers to like what's already in existence for traditional kind of experiences or development. And so if you have an opportunity to prepare your players for a regional, when I tell coaches, I go, it's 3 double elimination brackets. So I would have never thought of 5 pitchers on our staff, right? You can get through other national formats as we have with 1 pitcher in 7 games. Excuse me. And so now the depth, that we can't do that. I mean, fatigue absolutely played a role in the outcome of nationals last year. So you get to learn with that. And, but to know that you can drop one and come back and win, and then go in the next round and then drop one and come back and win, and then go to the Super 8. And so, man, it is a grind, but it's exactly what we want, because the feeling of experience, I don't think people talk about or look at it like that, but there's that knowing that you have that experience. And again, you want the experienced pilot, you want the experienced accountant, you want the experienced veterinarian, you want people that have seen it over and over, and they're there to reassure you. So going through that now, no matter how tough it is, and if we come up short, it's going to better prepare our girls for our young ladies for the next level.
One of the most vivid pictures and memories I have in my head from that is you and Mike Stith embracing after had to battle each other twice in a national championship setting. A lot of people, if you know the history of youth softball, you know the rivalry of the Bat Busters and the Firecrackers. And there's a lot of players that go on to college and they still, I think I played in the pro league with a couple, like, can I talk to her? She's a Firecracker, like she's a Bat Buster. But what a lot of people wouldn't know is the Bat Busters and the Firecrackers share a facility now. Can you talk? Because I love to hear your impressions of Mike and how that relationship formed, and how in the world can the Bat Busters and the Firecrackers live out of the same facility these days?
Well, what I'd want to pass on to everybody, it's respect, and it's respect earned, it's respect given. So that's where nothing ever would have happened between Mike and I if there wasn't a respect being developed as we competed against each other. So first time Mike beat us, I think, was in the '90s, and then we kind of went head to head in kind of mid 2000s, like 2006, 2007. But it was that look. Everybody knows when you've got someone acting a certain way that you don't really appreciate, which is not uncommon in softball. You remember that stuff, right? And as uncommon as it is, you also remember when someone acknowledges what you do. So again, I would just tell coaches, you building relationships, don't ever underestimate it, and don't overestimate the competition at hand, because that's going to be over, whether you get the trophy or not. But you're coaching against these people for years. These kids age out, right? They move on. And so Mike and I go back quite a long time. And when our program started to expand, he and I went to lunch. I'm going to say probably 2013, something like that. And Mike said something like, "Hey, you want to meet? Because I don't think anybody else has these stories to share besides you and I." So we met together in common ground, and just like everyone is doing right now, hey, what's wrong with softball? What could be better? Like, just conversations. I will say this: the Alliance was not a planned move. We didn't have this 5 years. We all knew generally what we'd like to see, but it's the best thing that came out of COVID for us. I mean, if there was no COVID, we wouldn't have had these opportunities to really put these ideas have them come to fruition. So it's weird how that stuff happened, but mutual respect, competitive respect, being able to take care of business on the other side. Win or lose, the way your teams are playing. And so now we coexist and cohabitate in a facility. And it's really funny because people walk in and thinks like, out here we have gangs like the Bloods and the Crips, and you think, oh, that's over there. Then they see Mike walking, smiling, and then we're talking. And it's funny because you don't always notice, but you notice enough when parents are kind of looking at both of us going, hey, like they like each other. And so the whole house, the whole facility is actually good. And there is still two different models, right? You've got Batbusters constantly working hard, the grind, pulling weights. I don't think those weights sit on the ground more than 2 minutes before someone's pushing them. I mean, they're strong. That's what they do. They're a championship model. They do all these things. And then you've got like Culture Tony over here asking his hitters questions and pointing and doing and creating T-shirts and putting purple lights on the wall and boom. And so it's like two different things in the same facility. You'd have to ask Mike. He might think, yeah, anyone else, that would drive me nuts. But I think it's a really good, healthy balance of the two operations, and then the mutual respect in the middle. So why do softball orgs and teams have to badmouth, right? Let's be like chefs and just talk about we cook differently and what they do well over there. But that's something I would love to see a bigger change in as well too. Is compete on the field, right? There's a place for us to go at it.
That's so, you beat me to it, because I've been there and I've seen what's going. It's just culture, it's brands, and even kind of the players that gravitate towards your brands. And you got the Batbusters over here on their side and what they're doing, and you've got the Firecrackers, what they're doing. What are some of those things? What do you notice about, and it could be even beyond the Batbusters and Firecrackers, but what are some of the things that each of those organizations is doing and maybe does a little bit different?
Well, the thing I get from Mike is how he invests in those kids and this is my perception, this isn't anything he's told me, but he will invest times in those younger 12s, 13s, like he sees them. Like you can see the 9, the 10s, the 12s in there, and they're working to be something later. And our model in the past, with the way I'm all over the place, is I really oftentimes don't meet a player till she's a sophomore in high school. So the Lauren Chamberlains and the Sis Bates, they got the heap of the education pretty scary for them in their first year with being sophomores. So that's something that I have admired and I respect, and that I'm spending a little more time with some of our younger players. I've always been the kind of guy, hey, well, if they go to the Batbusters, they go, hey, we lost a little bit, because I'm just one of those guys. I'm gonna be okay no matter what. I'm not worried about that. Just give me 9 players and we can play. But seeing that model, it's like, whoa, you know what? We'd be a little bit better with that. Maybe there's a thing or two, they get from us, but they'd have to tell you that. But it's been awesome. It's been a very rewarding experience. This last chapter in my coaching career, however long it lasts, is a bigger picture concepts with collaborating with people that way past my normal scope, and it is absolutely one of the most rewarding aspects of coaching so far.
What are some of the things I've seen it is specifically like the range pitching, but what are some of the things that you guys are doing right now as a team, as an organization, as a facility?
As a team, what's a little bit different right now with the format of Alliance and qualifying is, man, coming out after Christmas and spending 2 weekends going over signs and plays that we normally wouldn't do till like May. So taking the team into summertime mentality because of the qualifying tournaments that we have, that's been a little bit different, but fun challenge. Maybe a little more uncomfortable than they would like it to be at this point, but really important. Organization wise, we're really trying to work on, I think when you have this many teams, it's important for everyone to feel included so that you don't send a message that only applies to a certain type of team or population. So no matter if you're struggling to just hold on to players, we want people to understand. We have national weekly meetings with our coaches, and I give my experience based on a couple of things. I do a coaching corner and kind of a current events, but then we have a recruiting advisory board, and the members of that board, they have experience in recruiting that I don't have. And then we have coaches sharing their experiences with other coaches. So our Alaska coach might come up and say, hey, so you guys think we need to go to Colorado? I mean, we're ready. How do we? And then people will come on. So that's great as an organization. We're kind of doing things there. And then collectively, I think on a national scope, I like being part of just creativity. So it's the another analogy. I like the process of writing a song. Not that it has to be good or someone has to buy it, just something new. So collaborating with the people in the Alliance has been amazing. Jami, you have been. This doesn't work without you as the point system. I mean, you have just been perfect for like what we need. And I'll just say this real quick, so I know you'll get embarrassed. But okay, I'm of a certain color, you're of a certain gender. We'll just use those two things right now. But I don't want anything based on my color. And I'm going to say you don't want anything based on your gender. We don't want to be denied opportunities, and I don't ever feel like I really have. But that is the reality in society. But when you can be of something, but you are the best person for it, now what does that say for your gender, for your race, or whatever? And so you being the point person for the Alliance, because everyone just, we're going to look at you and we're going to shoot you down. We're going to look for that vulnerability. We're going to look for, never let them see a sweat. How are you in that most? And I have been able to see you through a lot of different things. Another name comes to mind, and that's Krista Crawford with Triple Crown, because I've watched her grow with that event business and kind of the ups and downs from the beginning of it and where she's at right now. And I'm so proud of her for her ability to make decisions under stress when things are going crazy with events, which you have that experience too. Now you go around the country, and who would have ever thought the perception of Marty Tyson, and then what we know about Marty, which we won't say, and even Marty's relationship with Mike, which we won't talk about, but even that perception of it, and it's just amazing. And then across the country, I don't know Tom Bunn, but I've heard Tom Bunn speak of the Stars a few times on the commissioner meetings. I'm always super impressed with everything that I hear. So a lot of times when I'm hopping on the meetings, I like to listen to the perspectives of other people. We have so many well-intended, good, capable people that don't have the notoriety, but man, they are so much better than me and a lot of us in areas that we really need. The Higdons, the Taylors, the perception of Greg Dickel, and how he does come across purposely. I mean, look what he does for a living. But to hear those stories and know and see Greg, and I've just had limited experience with him, but I love, experience that we've had. Jazz Jackson, Kevin Shelton. I mean, they're all over the place. Joe Breer in Washington has just done an amazing job of, like, again, what was there before? A couple of orgs very well known. He's taken on a big task up there. And I can go on and on, right? But that's been just a great part of expanding the relationships. And then you'd mentioned the range. My partner Holly and I have worked together, and we're just so we're so different. She's the brains. She's got a master's in psychology. She's a college pitcher, college pitching coach. She's the brand. She's got style. She's got taste. And I call myself Crazy Coach Tony that's figured out how to do some things with some pitchers. And so even that in delivering information, education, or passing on experiences to not only pitchers, but pitchers' parents and pitchers, their coaches for their teams. And I don't come to this as a pitching coach. I don't teach how to throw pitches. I come to this as a coach who's managed pitchers and has had to try to navigate a way to win games with what we have. So put those two things together. Um, I would ask again, anyone that might be listening, check it out. And I always tell, just like even this podcast, if this didn't do anything to you and we lost you with our Who's in the Car, turn it off and go do something else. But check out the Range Pitching Academy, because the one thing that Holly is doing is she's not just talking about what we believe in with the range, she's highlighting Cat Osterman. She's highlighting other pitching instructors. Like, she understands the unifying part of what we're trying to do. So in order to earn respect, you've got to give respect. And Holly's talking about everybody in the pitching industry, finding what they do well and then sharing their reels and sharing things. And so it's actually really cool because we feel like the pitching dialogue is going past, for a lot of pitchers, how do I throw a pitch? And now it's, what do I do with the pitch? So she just did a segment, and then I'll do this real quick, but she just did a few segments called, Mic'd Up. Everyone knows what Mic'd Up is. But if you were to go to our Instagram and watch these kids talk as they're throwing bullpens, they're saying out loud what it is they're trying to do with the next pitch, and they're relating it to a situation. 0-2, change up. All right, missed that one. I'm going to come in with a screwball now. So they're starting to simulate situations. And Jami, it's like the first time I saw you play catch. It's like watching someone play wiffle ball or in the backyard. We're not giving mechanical lessons by ourselves in the backyard. It's like, I am George Brett right now, and I'm going to double off the wall. I am Nolan Ryan. So to hear these young ladies engage in that, oh man, I can't even tell you how awesome it is to watch that. So I'm really, really proud. And most of all, like, to have an equal partner like Holly, that is like, not only is she equal, she's above me in a lot of ways. So I love to submit to her and submit to you and say, look, we do certain things well, but you ladies knock it out of the park, Jami.
Well, there's so many follow-ups I could go, but there is something you mentioned about style, and I always think of you in branding and apparel. In fact, I wore black for you on purpose today, knowing that you and I were going to be chatting. So, but the Firecrackers brand and your apparel is something you should be very proud of, and something that others are trying to emulate and learn from, and what you've done with the Firecracker store. Can you give background on the brand and the apparel side and why that's important to you?
That story is like, I'll say again, anyone that might be listening, anyone that has a dream, anyone that says, that might resent me, or people that seem like we've monetized, we've created a business model, but then past the resentment, you're thinking, man, I'd really like to do that. If someone gave me an opportunity, I would love to do that. I would love to create a brand. I would love to work on logos. I would love to be able to sell my own merch. I would love to be able to do these other things, all these, and nothing that we do has an attached outcome. We don't have to win a championship. We compete for them. We don't have to have a certain amount of teams. We've never asked any teams to join, and we don't need to sell a certain amount of apparel. It just has all happened with the brand development. So that's going to start with Juliana Chittister now, Amanda Chittister's sister-in-law, Matt Chittister. So that's Amanda's brother. Pull him in. But Juliana, I met her with the USA team in South Africa in 2011. She came to the United States a year or so later, and she's just knocked out of the park. So she's our designer, and she's the one that creates even just the smallest changes year to year in kind of changing the brand and kind of refreshing it. And then Reagan Shack is our Reagan Stopnick. Oh my gosh, that's her maiden name, but Reagan Stopnick now is our retail manager, and she is just absolutely amazing. So my idea in apparel started with, hey, bro, can you make me some T-shirts and just give me a couple for my team? And then a guy delivered like 500 T-shirts, and that's all we had for the year. And that was in 2004. And now it's kind of ridiculous what it's grown into, but it's so rewarding. And I would just say, I feel bad, especially if a mom ever walks into our store or looks online and says, you don't have anything I like. So we always want to try to appease everyone as much as possible, grandmothers, grandparents, mothers, kids, whatever. I think we might have something coming out for the dog pretty soon. But it's just, there's pride in the brand, right? If it's not moving, we're not selling it. So yeah, so it's been exciting. I'd like to spend as much time designing a T-shirt as I do in the cage, showing someone how to hit a changeup. So been a fun part of the process, definitely.
But
And
I
anyone can do it. Anyone can do it.
well, and I know you too, and a lot of it is because of the female athlete and wanting her to feel good. Is that correct? That's what I gather a lot from you as well, the why behind it.
Absolutely. When it was pointed out to me and how my perception was widened on basically this is what you're doing to your young ladies and the way that you're dressing them, and I was like, so for me, the baggy, saggy pants, different things, giving them a uniform, but it didn't look anything like what they would wear for themselves or anything, and understanding that, and then realizing, boy, there's not many people taking the responsibility for the integrity of the presentation of the young woman. So yeah, I get a little bit personal about that stuff. You know me, I'll get a little bit nasty with uniforms or this or that, but we worked hard. And if you look at the image of most college teams on TV, it is outstanding. The watching the pitchers that go to the back of the circle, turn around, you notice the fit, you notice the style. Now they mix it with their brands. Now it's the NIL. So whether you want to look at it or not, I think you're at an advantage if you can look at it also as the entertainment business, right? So your brand, your persona, your expression, your style, the way you walk, all of these things is what creates intrigue into the show. Puts whether someone's going to watch it a little bit longer, whether someone's going to buy a ticket to watch you play, or just whether you're just representing the game better because the game deserves this. So yeah, I'm pretty strong minded in the principles of making sure that our young ladies feel as awesome as they could in what they're wearing. So it's not I didn't make this up, but the better they feel, the better they play.
Well, I know there's something going on because when I look at your alumni roster, obviously there's all Americans, there's players that have played at every level all over the place, but I think of some of the biggest personalities and brands in our sport. A Lauren Chamberlain, a Jen Schroeder who played for you, Megan Willis, who I know really well, and being a brand. Sis Bates is now probably one of the biggest brands. Where did Is that coincidence, or is that something that is actually practiced, learned, and taught about the brand for these athletes?
So proud. You mentioned Megan Willis. She was the first one that I believe I think I've mentioned this on our firecracker history video that we did, but she was the first one that to me like stood out of creating her own brand. Megan took a picture of her face with her catcher's mask on, but it was an up close picture, so you could see her blue eyes just popping through the window there. And so then I thought of what that picture would look like if she was 75 feet farther back, and you would have not seen any of her face. You just would have seen a silhouette in catcher's gear. And and then we had this reputation back, which was not on my end of it a conscious one, but like you had to be blonde to play on the team or something like that, which I always thought kind of funny because they don't have a blonde coach. But there was that kind of common denominator. But and I do believe that she in her own way influenced Jen and influenced indirectly probably, but watching what Jen Schroeder has done with her catching brand. Watch what all of the young ladies, and then we've had players that have actually had really strong brands. They just didn't go on and monetize them. But there's been really strong personas. I mean, I think of Linnea Monema back in the late '90s, and she was one of our first 18 and under players. And I always felt like Linnea could have had her own TV show, and so that's been a very rewarding part of what we do too, because it's development past the skills and what's happening on the field. So it's been conscious on our part, and it makes us really really proud to watch them go on and do. And I really think, and along with what you are all doing for what's happening in the college, they're the pioneers, right? In a lot of sense, a lot of you are pioneers for what hopefully will be happening in the next 50 to 100 years in fast pitch. And so it's pretty awesome to watch.
One of those players, Sis Bates, who is I think she's one of the biggest names and one of the most likable people. She was a firecracker. She played for you. She just had a big announcement this past week of her own glove line coming out. I guess first, did you see that? And give us a little background on Sis. And did you see this coming? Where Sis one day would have her own glove line?
Well, I knew that she had the brand capability. I'm just happy to see a company like Wilson, you know, back her and give her her signature glove. later on down the road, it's almost like UFC fighters. There might be an interest to make sure, okay, so what are they paying her, and why is she getting what she's worth? But that, just the first step of having it and having your own signature glove, I think that is absolutely huge. Because think of all the young ladies that would think, man, someday I could have my own glove. That's really like Lauren's message, right? When Lauren did the ESPN cover, it's like this is so that other people can feel better about their bodies or better about themselves and opportunities that they might have. And so I just think that's really, really powerful. Sis came to our team, very skilled. She was already a great player. I'd say probably undeveloped persona and brand. I tell people, I think she would agree. She didn't smile much at first, and so I think some of the things that we kind of pointed out were a little weird to her at first, and I think it helped her realize some things. She's got an awesome smile. She expresses herself well, and now she's known for dancing and smiling and things like that. You know, I'm I don't know if proud's the word. And like I tell our team, look, I apologize that it has to be so hard, the training to prepare you for, but I don't apologize that it happens. So Sis is pretty outright with her story of the struggles of travel ball and considering quitting and hitting her low point. But I'm proud that she hit her low point with us. I'm proud that that happened with us. I think, Lauren Chamberlain told me like she'd wake up on Sundays and be sick to her stomach knowing she was going to face me as the competition, and just the way that I drive home a point. And, again, a lot of coaches would understand this. You have to know if your methods are effective. If you are going to be hard on your kids, they have to know you love them. Marty talks about this all the time. You have to make sure that in the moment where you might have to be there, so that just as a player, right, you might have to tell your teammate this, hey, all right, don't tell her get your head out of your butt directly, but if you did have to say something to your first baseman like that, we have a pitcher that did that. Tell him afterwards, hey, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just in a moment. Put things back together. And when you can do that, you can be hard because you're aware of the relationship. But I think that coaches need to be aware of their kids' background, because I think something that I've mentioned is I don't treat all of our players equally. I treat them fairly, because a kid that comes from a really rough background and a rough household doesn't need to get yelled at and doesn't need to be told certain things. But yet the kid that hasn't had much disruption and is very fortunate that she hasn't dealt with a lot of discomfort emotionally or this or that, well, we're absolutely going to disrupt her and we're going to flip her upside down because she's already got the foundation. So now what we have to do is point out, you already have the roots. We've got to bring in a hurricane so you see what's doing that, because I'm all about watching them on TV and knowing that they've already been through the battles. And so the brand aspect of this, I hope more young ladies are looking at the potential for even just the fact that softball or not, it's going to help them in the business world later on down the road.
So I want to have a little fun, and this can go quick, but of player. They don't have to just be firecrackers. They could be players that you've seen in your career. Who's a player, and I'm not going to go much on this. First one that comes to mind, who's a player that surprised you the most in her softball career?
So Amanda Freed, going back to one of my first students, very slight of build, very gamey. I mean, being a ball player, I saw the way she was playing the game at 12, but I don't think a lot of people saw that. And then as early as 14 years old, she was already starting to do really, really good things. But I think of how many people would have said, you're going to go on and become an All-American at UCLA or make the Olympic team. She did a little bit of everything, a true versatile kind of utility type player. Not overachieve. She didn't overachieve, but I think she surprised a lot of people. But that's who popped in my mind first.
Who is one of the most challenging players you've coached?
Well, the first name that popped in my mind was Melissa Roth.
That was going to be my guess.
Second name that went in my mind is Melissa Roth. So Melissa Roth, but just an amazing person, and she just got married, and I can't even tell you how proud I am of her now. She's the first one. Those of you that have seen Bad News Bears, right? She's our tanner. She's our tanner, the shortstop that basically just tells the coach what they need to hear. And so the couple highlights with Mel, she was playing ball all around the world. She comes into the warehouse. She sees all the glitz and glam of the new brand, and she doesn't see much on the alumni. And she basically just looks at me, almost like my daughter. She goes like, "What's all this? Where are we? Don't you ever forget who we are." I was like, "Whoa, dude! Like, you're not the mom here, but definitely that." And then now she says, "I'm too soft." So the delivery back in the day when she was playing, won't say how far back it was, but she says you're just too soft now. And our kids right now are like, he's not too soft, but so definitely most challenging because fire, right? The tenacity, the I'm not always going to buy in. I'm gonna tell you the opposite. But definitely rewarding. And there's a whole group of players that kind of fit into that because it's a personality type. And I believe you're not going to win without a few of those players that are willing to bite their finger off to win a game. So
Absolutely. Who was one of the most intelligent players you've ever coached?
Megan Langenfeld, Ashley Hansen. That was easy. So Langenfeld just again got everything done with systematic play, execution, precision, practice. She really was the perfect business-made softball player, talented, but really worked her way to her success. And Ashley Hansen doesn't seem like the I don't want to say stereotype of a Stanford type kid because she's I'll just say, a lot of them can get in their head, very obsessive, perfectionist. It has to be right. Ashley was pretty even keel, but extremely high IQ and went on to become, again, slight of build, not very big, and went on to become NCAA Player of the Year at Stanford. And extremely intelligent player. And again, for those I've offended, there's a lot of them there, but those are the first two that popped in my head.
My
Not
guess
ranking one or two.
my guess is that Ashley Hansen, I think about her. She's a little bit younger than I am, but she's probably crushing it in a Fortune 100 company somewhere would be my guess. She seemed like that player.
She is. She is. Yeah, sure.
Who
Her at one point out of school, she was working for YouTube, and her husband, no one was working for Google. And I was like, oh my gosh.
most athletically gifted players?
Jamia Reed. So Jamia played for us in 2006, 2007. Fastest player we've ever had. Ridiculous athleticism, speed, power. True, just elite athlete. Easy. I don't think we've ever had an athlete like Jamia Reed. And, she's a little older now and probably still all the confidence in the world that she can still beat you in a race. I remember watching Jamia. I asked her if she could jump up on this table once. It was higher than a 6-foot table. And now, there's all kind of plyometrics where people are doing that and stuff. So, but back in the day, like you didn't see a lot of that. And she made it look like a video where someone's on the table and falling down. Because when she went up to the table, it looked like she didn't even try. It didn't look like she bent her knees and really jumped. She just kind of went whoop, like she levitated to the table. And it was just, yeah. So Jamia Reed, amazing athlete. Her sister Aaliyah played with us too. So I need to mention that. They were identical twins, but Jamia got it done.
And this could be somebody that you played against. Take college out of it. But who's the best travel ball softball player that you've ever seen?
Well, you said played against. So again, that whole group of women in the 90s that went on and set the standard in college and set the standard with the Olympic team. But when you talk about the ability to change a game, Stacey Newman, Crystal Bustos, man, just unreal. Until Lauren did some amazing things with the bat, right? But watching what Jocelyn Allo has done, because when you understand the game of the difficulty from the timing on a rise ball, the timing on a changeup, and they're the two opposite ends of the spectrum, and Jocelyn does this pitch to pitch sometimes. But amazing wise, it was Stacy and Crystal. Crystal Bustos, when she was in her teens, was ridiculous fast, ridiculous strong, ridiculous arm. It was ridiculous what she was doing, and you went to go watch her play. Definitely. Again, a lot of people in between. There's thousands of great players. But first one come to mind.
When you already mentioned Coach Horton, but who's another coach that has had one of the biggest impacts on your life and career?
Well, Coach Don on our my father passed when I was 33, and Don is not a direct father figure to me, but he's been a source of constant stability, strength, wisdom. Not that I go to him for advice or a lot of things, but just man, we've had a few patriarchs in our program, and they're all gone except for Don now. But Don has had the biggest influence in me having the reassurance that when I'm out there testing the boundaries of madman versus still kind of balanced, it's just knowing that he's there. He's been amazing. Really. just gives a lot. And there's a lot of peers, but that's more peer respect and camaraderie. But as far as security,
Well, we're pulling in. We're getting close to home on our car ride home. But before we park the
just turn
car,
off ramp like Don does, and we got another 35
we
minutes.
if my mom was driving, we would 100% be lost. So we'll extend. Here's our detour back to our destination. But Tony, like I said, this is
Oh,
our
wait,
first podcast.
here's a quick question for you. Here's a quick question for you. When you're driving, do you always use your navigation?
I do because of traffic.
Okay.
I
And
know where I'm
will
going.
you do
I'm
the
really good at
will
direction.
you will you do the like the ways or something where they'll take you on 27 little turns to save 11 minutes? Would you save the time, or do you just like I don't want to do all these because it's constant attention? So
I hate sitting still, so I got to be moving. So in hindsight, like even if it probably does take me a little bit longer, but I feel like I'm moving, I'm moving. So
I
yes, I
feel
detour.
I feel I feel like I'm waiting for that automated car where you don't do anything because I just want to relax. So the more attention that I have to pay to the road with all of the turns, then that kind of gets me a little bit. But I also don't like sitting in traffic. But anyways, okay. All right, so we're coming around the home stretch. What do we got?
I want you to just this kind of a free will here, but you're the one that pushed to do this podcast and to get more information out. So I'd love for you to leave just your 2 cents on what you want to see come out of this and why people should listen.
I think that's a great question because that term I used earlier, obvious perception, right? With what we're doing, and what we're doing is trying to just add and supplement to the our industry. We're not trying to put people out of business. We're not competing against other companies. We're just trying our best to work together and pass things on. And with that being said, we know that perception is strong, and none of us, right? So you go into the Batbuster side of things, you do not see trophies all over the place. You do not see neon signs saying the Batbusters are the best. You don't see Firecracker neon signs, nothing. We really don't market to try to pull people in. We don't do that. So the challenge is, through your perceptions, to find the truth in the alliance. Only if you're interested. There's a couple reasons why I think the storytelling of Alliance, which really for me, the Car Ride Home podcast is storytelling. The stories inside the Alliance are amazing, even if it's only to learn more about some people that have done some things that a lot of people will never do again, or it's going to be really hard to duplicate what some of these coaches have done on and off the field. As you have these conversations, getting to know the people, helps me build trust in them. All right. I think now more than ever, if we know something about the people that we're spending money on or that are providing things for us and we're skeptical as we should be or pessimistic, understandable. But the more we know about them, but not by them selling themselves to us, I'm this and that, and this is what I've done, and, oh, and come to the Alliance, and we're going to do this for you. Man, I'm already out the door if somebody, and again, it's kind of those things that you and I know about that it's sharing the story of the people inside the Alliance. And then outside of the Alliance, just your network of friends. If people were aware of your network of friends and the people you collaborate with, and it's interesting, Jami, to watch where even you're at now in the perception of softball, because you didn't have an ambition of wanting to be the head of this and being that. It is where it is. The lineup makes itself, right? Here you are. So I would just encourage people, again, never listen to something more than you want to. But I think that Jami is an amazing person, conversationalist. She's so well. It's not like you just got here, people, right? So that's intriguing as well too. Hear the stories of the Alliance. Hear the stories of the people of what is the truth, and then evaluate us, assess us, and make the best decision for you because we're not trying to pull anybody anywhere. But don't just go with Captain Obvious. Like, come on, man. That's that thing. I think there's a segment on that on the show. Come on, man.
Yeah,
Jami, I'm on the financial meetings, right? Do I talk about making money and how much money? Uh,
everything but.
you would be free to share with the world how much money Tony has got from the alliance so far. I'm in the red, but I'm in the positive of being but I'm in the positive of this experience. I don't care if we never make a dollar. This is fun to be able to try to do this. So that's what I'd like to see come out of the podcast. I think you're a great host for this. I'll always be available. Don't be afraid to put more people in the car.
Well, I'm ready to have a full car, and I appreciate you taking the first ride with us. So, Tony, first car ride home. Thank you very much for being a part of it.